Well, it's late September as I'm filming this, and this is the time of year when I start to think about what kind of warm, cozy meals am I going to want over the winter. Well, there are all the usual soups and stews and things, but I also need to shake things up a little bit every now and then and get a different flavor profile on the shelf. This is one of those today, so I think you're going to enjoy it. Welcome to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter, and I'm so glad you're here today. We're going to do a dish today called beef Rogan Josh. This is based on a dish out of Kashmir, northern region of India. It was originally done using lamb or maybe goat, maybe even mutton. We're going to use beef in ours, hence the name Beef Rogan Josh. It also did not originally have tomatoes in it. There are a lot of recipes out there, and it's kind of been Americanized for the US palate over time. So my version, the one that I created, is also going to be what I would call an Americanized version. So we're going to use beef, we're going to use tomatoes, but it's going to have a lot of the same great flavor profiles as the original. So while I'm cutting up this beef, let me show you what I have here. I went to just get regular stew beef from Costco. They did not have it again. So I am using chuck roast, which is more expensive than the regular beef stew meat. This is $6.19 a pound, and the beef stew meat is usually $4.99 to $5.49, but it is what it is. This will actually be a more tender piece of meat, so it's all a good thing. It just requires a lot more work in the beginning with all the chopping. All right, after I trim that up, I'm a little shy of 5 pounds, but that ought to be perfect for us. With the chuck roast, there's always the kind of silver skin to cut off. I don't want a hard to chew piece of meat in there. I want to put this in the skillet, heat it up, and serve it. So you can see there's still some fat left on there, which is just fine. We are going to brown this up to begin with. A good bit of that will render down. Whatever doesn't render down is just going to add flavor in the jar. There won't be too much fat. All right, let's talk about the recipe. First thing is that this is my recipe. This is not a recipe that anyone has tested with the US government, but it is a recipe that follows safe canning guidelines put out by the US government. So we'll start with that. The next thing you need to know is I'm going to use the Azure Standard 24-ounce jars. I find that this is a really good amount for my husband and I to share on something that is the protein of the meal, but not necessarily the entire meal. So when I go to serve this, I may serve it on rice or cauliflower rice or potatoes, or just on a bunch of roasted veggies. On sweet potatoes, it would be fantastic. So it's not the whole meal, but it is the main part of our meal. So 24 ounces, I think, is a really good size for us. So I'm going to make seven 24-ounce jars. So if you're just cooking for one person, then a pint might be the right size for you, in which case I would simply cut everything in half and go for 5 pints, and then just fill the rest of your canner with some empty jars or jars of water, or maybe there's jars of extra sauce or whatever. But really, if you don't have the 24-ounce jars, no problem. But just think through how you're going to use something that is potentially a main part of the meal, but not the entire meal, and how much do you need in your quantity. What I am doing is between 4.5 and 5 pounds of a lean cubed beef. As I said, stew beef would be my normal go-to in the circumstance, using chuck roast today, and I think that's going to be even more tender. So whatever suits you, whatever you happen to have, is just fine. Okay, I think we are finally done with our beef. Get the last of this out. It is the part that takes the longest, but having the beef browned adds such a great depth of flavor to the dish. I think it is totally worth it. All right, I'm going to get the beef out of the way, and we'll start building the rest of this. Add a little bit of oil. And And these onions, these are the onions I did in the food processor yesterday. This is they do not need to be red onions or purple onions. That's just what I had left. These are the last of my onions that I'm preserving from the garden. Turn that down just a little bit. All right, let's get a little salt in here so the onions will release some liquid. So I'm adding our 1 tablespoon of salt. I turned this down too low, didn't I? Let's get that going again. Okay, finally getting back up to temperature. Turn that down way too far. All right, I'm going to add in our garlic. And this is just the Costco crushed garlic. I bought one of those giant jars. I'm really trying to work through it. I forget about it. So that was a little over 1/4 cup of crushed garlic. We'll let that cook down for a few minutes. Let the liquid evaporate. And let those onions kind of become translucent. They're so small, it won't take very long. But we'll give that just a few minutes. Onions have been cooking down a few minutes. Most of the liquid is evaporated, so let's start getting the ginger and our seasonings in here. I want a little over 1/4 cup of ginger. That's probably 1/2 cup I have left in here, so we'll use a good bit of it. We'll go for that and call it a little over 1/4 cup. I'm going to push everything to the side so I can get the seasonings in, toast them up just a little bit. See, I do have a little bit of liquid still in there, but I'm going to try to hit the seasonings over in the dry spot here. Start with our garam masala. Coriander. Quite have 2 tablespoons of cumin. There's probably 1.5 tablespoons there, so that's what I'm going to use. Smells fantastic. Okay, paprika. One tablespoon of cinnamon. A couple teaspoons of turmeric. So not quite a tablespoon. A couple of teaspoons of black pepper. Okay, a teaspoon of cloves, teaspoon of cardamom. Now, if you don't have cardamom, or maybe you have, let's say you have cardamom pods, I would crack them and put the cardamom pods along with the bay leaves in some cheesecloth in a little sachet and put it in there to make it easy to fish those out. And then a teaspoon of, this is the hot pepper powder that I've been making throughout the summer. Not quite as hot as cayenne, but it has a nice bite to it. So I'm going to use a teaspoon of that. Stir this up. All right, let's add the tomatoes. This is 6 cups of tomatoes. Drop in a couple of bay leaves. Find some that are large enough you'll be able to fish them out pretty easily. It's easier said than done. There we go. All right, a couple of bay leaves. Now let's get our beef broth in here. Okay, I'm going to let this simmer for a while, reduce just a bit, let all those flavors come together. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and get my jars set up, my canner ready, because we are very close to being ready to can this. Okay, you can see, let me see if you can see. There we go. So this is cooked down a good bit. The consistency is really good. It's tomatoes, garlic, ginger. Still a little chunky, but just perfect to be a sauce. Then we have one last ingredient, which is totally optional. I think it's necessary, just like with spaghetti where you add just a little bit of sugar to balance the flavors. I like to use molasses. You can use sugar, you can leave it out altogether. It is a very Americanized thing that I'm doing to this dish, but to me it really adds the balance that it needs. So I'm going to add just a couple of tablespoons of molasses. You would do this to your taste. This stirred in, and then we're going to give it a taste with a little bit of yogurt mixed in, because that's how we're going to serve it. And then I'm going to fish those bay leaves out of there, so don't let me forget to do that. Let's taste that, see if I want any more molasses in there. I just have a little dish here. A couple tablespoons of that. Then I have the yogurt that I use, so I'm going to put just a smidge of that in there. So just a smidge of that. Let me taste this. I think that's great. It doesn't taste sweet. We're not going for sweet, just balance. Yep, I think we're good to go. All right, let's get this stirred up. Wow, if I could stop eating it, that's terrific. Ooh, let's fish out those bay leaves. I almost forgot, I knew I would. The second one is hiding from me. All right, well, we'll keep an eye out for it as I'm scooping the sauce into the jars. All right, that's the best I can do right now. Okay, so let's get a little bit of sauce into each jar. These are these jars from Azure, kind of a slight green tint. I think they're beautiful. They're a little heavier weight than the ball jars of the same size. And I think the price is fantastic. Oh, I see the bay leaf. There we go. Okay, last one is out. Okay, now let's get the beef in there. And then we'll top it off with the rest of the sauce. Going for a generous 1-inch headspace. We still need to debubble these before we seal them up. All right, let's debubble and see where we are on each of these. All right. Oh, I have a mess to clean up. So you can buy these jars from Azure with or without the lids and rings. They come with the superb lids. I think you can see that. I decided, even though I'm not necessarily thrilled that they put their logo right in the center of where I want to write, the lids are definitely solid. They are very solid lids, very thick, very heavy duty, make quite the pop when they seal. So I have no issue with the lids other than the fact that they wrote superb in raised letters right in the center. Kind of messes up my writing area. But I decided to go ahead and buy them with the lids because it made the lid price so much less expensive than buying lids on their own. So I went ahead and did that. Glad I did. I'm going to put these on fingertip tight. They're going to go in the pressure canner. Now it's important to note, if you use the 24-ounce jar, we are going to process it as though we were processing quarts. So we're going to process this for 90 minutes. If you're doing pints, you would process it for 75 minutes. Doing quarts, process it for 90 minutes. And these 24-ounce jars are also 90 minutes. I do not find at all, in fact, maybe even it is a benefit, I don't find that it makes anything overcooked at all. If anything, it makes the beef more tender. Okay, I'm going to get these in the canner. So here's my canner all loaded. You can see that 7 of these 24-ounce jars fits in here. The width of these is the same width as the pint-size wide mouth jars. So in the Presto Electric, you can fit 7 of these jars or 7 wide mouth pints. In the All-American I can fit 8. It's been so long since I've used it. I think I could do 8 wide mouth pints in that one. Or you can switch over to regular mouth pints and you could do 8 of those in here or 10 of those in the All-American. So just do what suits you. This to me just works perfectly, and this is the right size for a meal for the 2 of us. Okay. The canner is going to do the rest of the work for me. And we'll just come back when it's all done. This came out so well. Everything turned out perfectly with it. But now I need to show you how I turn this into dinner, because I think that's where, so many of us got lost for such a long time. We make these wonderful creations, we go put them on the shelf, and then it's like, okay, now what? So I made my first batch of this back in August, and I think it's important with a recipe like this to let it sit on the shelf for a couple of weeks so that all of those fantastic flavors kind of meld together. The things that need to mellow out, things that need to kick in, kind of kick in for you. So this one has been on the shelf for maybe 3 weeks. So I'm going to serve this for dinner. It is so simple. The longest part of this is making the cauliflower rice. So I'm just going to put this in a pan on the stove top. I don't need any oil or anything. It's in there to warm up basically and heat through. So I'm going to pop the cauliflower rice in the oven. I do that about 425, and it probably takes 20 minutes. I don't know, it takes much longer than I feel like it should, but it's straight out of the freezer, just cauliflower rice from Costco. So super simple. I've also made a little side salad, so you'll see that in a minute as well. So I'm going to heat up the beef Rogan Josh, and I'm going to break down those chunks of meat because I want it to be kind of meat all the way through, not just a few chunks and then a bunch of gravy. So I like it when it's broken down a bit, certainly not necessary, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to smush each of those little cubes, and that's really all I need to do. Then I want to finish this. Traditionally, beef Rogan Josh is finished with yogurt, and that's what I'm going to use today. I have some goat's milk yogurt that I particularly like. I'm going to add about a half a cup, and I'm going to get that worked in, and the yogurt does take a few minutes to kind of work into the sauce. So I'll stir that around again, reheat everything, because I'm still waiting on that darn cauliflower rice. So if you don't want to use yogurt or don't have any yogurt, my next option would be coconut milk. Now, it'll add a slightly different finishing taste to this because coconut milk, and I would use a full fat variety like something out of the cayenne or, you know, a Roy D in the carton, which is what I use. But it'll add a sweetness to this, which could also be an outstanding flavor profile to add to this. But with the yogurt, you kind of get the tang and you get the softening and you get the creaminess. So I think both would be good. We love the yogurt, so maybe next time I'll try it with the coconut milk, but I thought the yogurt was really terrific. So now that the cauliflower rice is ready, I'm going to start to get this served up. You know, I like to serve everything in these big kind of pasta bowls, and you know, being keto, we don't really eat pasta, so I, you know, have to use them for something, right? So this is my favorite way to serve just about anything. So I'm going to put the cauliflower rice in, and then I'm going to put this sauce on top. And we like lots of gravy, especially David, who is not a big fan of cauliflower rice, but that's what the poor man gets to eat in my house. So I'm going to put this on top of the cauliflower rice, and then I'm going to add in our salad. And this, I got to tell you, this is so tasty. So as I was filming this, I kind of forgot that I wasn't talking to you. David was watching the news in the next room, so I had to have the volume off. And I'm trying to tell you that this is so good, but it is so darn hot. I need to have a little patience and wait till it's done before I take a big taste test. So I hope that you enjoyed this today. I hope you're going to try this. I know it's different. I know it's not necessarily something everybody's going to go search for. How do I can beef Rogan Josh? But when you have this on your shelf and you can pull out something totally different from other profiles that you may have on their other flavor profiles, I think you're going to be really happy you have it. So thank you so much for being here. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. And I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.